So, Star Trek Picard Season 2 had its first episode released, and it was a great introduction into a more familiar Starfleet, some years on from when we last were immersed in it. Spoilers ahead, but I won't be delving into the plot too greatly. Instead, I'm here to talk about the fleet that we saw amassed. The year is 2401, the beginning of the 25th century, and a new era for Starfleet. Until now, we have not had a series set in this century, with only the occasional glimpse into alternate futures that never unfolded. But this decade was the setting time for the multiplayer game Star Trek Online. Viewers of my channel are no doubt familiar with this game, either through my story series or as the background footage for many a Trek video. As a video game, its events are to be considered apocryphal, so imagine my surprise and joy when we actually get to see several ships from that timeline turn up in canon alongside some old favourites and newer additions to the lore. This video aims to break down the new ships of the fleet as we go forwards. To begin with, we have the newest ship of the line, the USS Stargazer NCC 82893. This is the first command of Captain Chris Rios, and named for the first command of then-Captain Jean-Luc Picard, a fact not lost on the crew and alluded to several times. This ship was the first of its class, the type being designated a Sagan class, so originally this would have been the USS Sagan with an NX registry, clearly receiving a name change upon its progressing from prototype to active duty. The registry now reads 82893 as a nod to the Constellation class Stargazer of old, whose registry was 2893. Like its older counterpart, it has 4 nacelles and is the first Starfleet ship to officially include advancements derived from Borg technology, not including the modifications made to the USS Voyager. Quite what its capabilities are remain to be seen. Moving on, we have several classic designs in the fleets that I noticed, including several Sutherland Class starships. This class was top of the line when it was first commissioned 28 years ago, and the replacer to the Galaxy class. It was designed as a multi-mission explorer and the pinnacle of Starfleet versatility from defence to diplomacy. We saw several Akira class vessels. These low-profile escorts were designed to patrol and protect Federation space, and to combat the Borg in particular. They sacrificed a little more on the versatility that the Sovereign had in favour for this role, but both vessels were new additions to the fleet's lineup decades ago. Now they serve more of the backbone role of the fleet, while newer vessels are stepping in to innovate. But just look at how long the Excelsior was kept up to date, and the Sovereign in particular is basically the new Excelsior. Saying that, we have an actual new Excelsior. I think it's safe to say that this vessel is the USS Excelsior, and it very well could be a variation on the 2381 Obenda class as captained by Sonia Gomez, although this vessel does look far more like the original Excelsior class with its nacelle pylons, saucer thickness and deflector colour. It would make more sense that it was just a variation of the newer class. Otherwise, it's yet another overhaul of the actual USS Excelsior NCC 2000, which would make it a 108-year-old ship. We have a couple of Inquiry-class starships too, which were the mass-produced Federation vessel that was fresh out of space dock in 2399, making them one of the newer vessels of the fleet. According to Captain Riker, they were the toughest ships that the Federation had put into service, and apparently a Tal Shiar agent who had complete access to Starfleet security records knew the capabilities well enough to not consider that an idle threat. We never got to see them in action, but the ships were so new, most apparently hadn't even been registered yet, but presumably from their description they were supposed to be fast and durable rapid responders, although they were named after famous Earth explorers and cartographers. Now, moving on to those ships which existed in the orbital canon that have now graduated into being actual big boy Trek ships. We have several Sutherland Class vessels, which was a newer ship built to replace the Nebula class. Many of the ships in Star Trek Online were adaptations of previous designs, brought up to spec for their era, so you can quite clearly see the heritage of several ships in its resemblance to an older class. After all, if you're seeking to create a newer vessel to do the same job as an old one but better, then, well, the older one is a great starting point to build off. The Sutherland Class possessed the same mission pod that the Nebula had, although it was most often deployed with the sensor variation for scientific missions or missions where Starfleet needed sensitive ears. Interestingly, this vessel had great research and development features, as well as a specialisation in tachyon-based technology. Considering the rift that was created in the episode was flushed with tachyons, it would be a well-equipped option to send to investigate. Next up is the Ross Class. This ship was built off of the Galaxy class schematics and featured a distinctive diamond-shaped secondary hull and angled pylons. The Ross Class was built on the developments and innovations of active Galaxy class vessels while they were in operation. Although a magnificent class, the Galaxy did have its faults that engineers uncovered through use. The main bulk of research was provided by Geordie LaForge and data from their experiences in tinkering with the Enterprise D, so the Ross Class was basically the Galaxy 2.0. This vessel therefore acted as a testbed for several technologies that would go on to be implemented in the Sovereign class, making this one of the oldest ships of the fleet, as it technically has been in commission since the early 2370s and on the drawing board since before that. There is also a Reliant Class starship here, which, as the name suggests, was a successor to the Miranda class. Much as the Miranda was to be a powerful backbone workhorse for the Federation back in the 23rd century, the 25th century Reliant was to replicate this role. The ships were noted to be rather more utilitarian than the Miranda by upping their defensive properties at the cost of diminishing its other roles' fitness. By no means the most formidable ship of this lineup, it is still tuned up and a powerful vessel. The most outstanding vessel to me is the Gagarin class we see on screen. The Gagarin, in the canon of Star Trek Online, was the result of Starfleet being able to access the long-abandoned Yard 39, which had suffered contamination by baryonic particles for about 150 years. Yard 39 was abandoned, with all its facilities and several ships in half-completed states, dating back to the ships of Discovery-era Starfleet, the Klingon War. After the yard was rendered habitable again, Starfleet salvaged the frames of these vessels, scrapped the obsolete tech, and built on the frames with newer innovations. This led to the former Shepard-style vessels to get a rebirth as the Gagarin class. Although in the lore this happened in 2410, there's no reason you couldn't dial back the clock on Yard 39 a decade or so. Technically, it is one of Starfleet's few dedicated battleships, and full of top-of-the-line systems. The trade-off was that it was a very hungry vessel in terms of power requirements, so its EPS power regulation system had to be top-of-the-line too, to keep up with the demands and speedy transfer of energy. So, there we go. That was a breakdown of all the ships witnessed in the first episode of Star Trek Picard, and I have to say, it was frankly awesome to see the marrying of the previous generations of vessels like the Akira and Sovereign from the pinnacle of 2370s design, alongside the newer vessels like the Gagarin, replete with missing link classes like the Excelsior Bender and the Ross class. It's also strange to think of ships like the Sovereign as the older generation now, but hey, we have a Starfleet that is moving on and innovating, drawing on the canon of Apocrypha to flesh out its direction. I did also spot what I think is a Lunar class vessel in the background, but not sure. I had no problem with the Zheng He and the Inquiry classes that turned up in Picard Season 1, I just didn't like seeing an entire fleet of the same ship. This is far more accurate in terms of a familiar Starfleet armada. All that's missing is the Odyssey class, which still sort of sits in the maybe not grey zone of continuity that the Titan occupied for some time. Thanks for watching this breakdown on the new 25th century fleet. I'll probably look into some of these vessels in specifics at a later date, but for now I've been Rick and I'll see you next time for another lore video. Goodbye.